Again, thanks for coming. We are going to be talking today about what we can do for you to protect your virtualized environments. Everyone here obviously is obviously interested in virtualized environments and moving that way aggressively, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But associated with that move are a number of challenges. Scale, how to protect the hundreds or thousands of VMs you either have today or are moving towards. And we can provide some guidance on what we think will be the most effective solutions for you as you move forward. So please, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask at any time. I'm happy to take questions. I like to have an interactive presentation. So, just spend a minute talking about who Commvault is. We are a company that, as at least of today, has about $1 billion market cap. Thank you, 3PAR. We are located in New Jersey, headquartered in Oceanport. That's where our main center of development is. We used to be part of AT&T, actually. We have about 1,100 employees worldwide. We have a major development center in India. We have development in Redmond. We have development in Canada. Our global sales and support staff cover all of our customers. Worldwide, we have offices in all major regions. We have about 12,500 customers, and that's growing pretty quickly. The key to our software, and what makes us a little different, is that our code has been grown organically from within. Unlike some of our peers in the industry, we have not acquired anyone in order to develop our suite of features. And so that gives us a unique advantage. Our software is based on what we call our common technology engine, and that is a single code base, a single platform that incorporates common features like deduplication, encryption, content indexing and search, reporting and scheduling. All of those sit in a common engine for us, and our agents plug into that. And so in order to add support for Exchange, for instance, we have agents that plug into the software for archiving and backup and replication. We have similar agents for a wide variety of systems like Oracle, DB2, Unix. Pretty much name a major application that doesn't run on a mainframe, and we protect it, we manage it. And this allows us to really easily extend our support for new platforms, which gave us a nice base to add our VMware support, which we've had for quite some time. So extending that thought, our VMware support can take advantage of all the features of our common engine, including things like deduplication. I'll be talking about that later today. What's our value story? We are a growing company. We're definitely smaller than some of our competitors. But we pride ourselves on being one of the best software companies in the industry. And how do we measure that? We measure that by customer satisfaction. We measure that by industry metrics. And we set a 97% customer satisfaction rating based on Storage Magazine's Quality Awards in 2010. This is an award that we've won 5 out of the last 6 years. And that's something we take a lot of pride in. We're not just here to pump out software as quickly as possible. We want to make sure that our customers are happy, that we support our customers well, that we provide the best experience we can for our customers. This morning, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Brian Deegan, who is the Vice President of Network Services for First National Bank. He's going to be talking with you a little bit to share his experiences on virtualization, how that's benefited his group, and how we've worked together in order to really advance how they manage their data in their data center. So, Brian?
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Hello? All right, I'm on. I think. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. Good morning. My name is Brian Deegan. As Dave said, I'm the Vice President of Network Services, First National Bank of Pennsylvania. I'm here to share my virtualization story with you folks this morning. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself and the company before I get going here, just to set the stage. I started off as a desktop support technician. You know, like a lot of you, I watched the movie Office Space. You guys watch that? only one way to get promoted: throw a couple cubes around, do some stuff, and okay, really didn't have to do that, but didn't move up, and I can relate to each and every one of you. I've seen a lot of hardworking, good people here that do the right thing for the company. And the challenge you face on a daily basis are normally not seen by senior folks, and I get to see that every day. My staff, speaking of good folks, I have a staff of 17 people that support over 3,200 PCs, 300 locations. My network engineers support over 200 servers apiece. My desktop support people support over 400 PCs apiece. So we're not understaffed. Well, we're not overstaffed by any imagination. We're very busy folks. We do a lot of things. We do our own network operations center with that group of people. We do 24/7 support. Our SLAs, we have not a response time, but a resolution time of 4 hours for major systems being down with a staff of 17 with over 300 locations, 300 pieces of software, and we actually pull that off 99% of the time. So that all said, I'll give you the other half of the equation. That's First National Bank of Pennsylvania. First National Bank of Pennsylvania is managed by a group of very, very conservative, smart business banking people. They're excellent people, not so good about technology. So on one side of the house, I have this great group of technicians that do a lot of incredible work, that will do anything to make something work, and they're all about the newest, latest, greatest stuff. On the other side of the house, I have this group of business leaders and managers and C-level folks that are, okay, what's our ROI? How much money are we making? What are you going to give me? They don't really care about the technical stuff. So everything I do has to be related. I have to relate every project I do into some bottom line business payback of some type. Well, I'm not sure how that worked for all of you, but with virtualization, I've got a staff of people over here going, hey, we want this stuff. It's really cool. It's really neat. It's really awesome. And over here, I've got the management group saying, yeah, but what's that give us? And it came down to the best angle we could play was the backup and recovery angle. We found ways to improve our backup and recovery systems by going to actual virtualization. We didn't have it, in 2008, we did not have a SAN. We had no virtualization. We had 13 different backup systems. We had one poor soul running around trying to make all these backup systems work and function. I think he will have less hair than me at some point in his life. I mean, it was very hard. It was very hard for him to do that. So you can see how that came about. Commvault was extremely instrumental in helping us get this presented to senior management, making sure things were working and moving it on. They did two major things that were very, very good. The first thing was they showed me a cost analysis. If we kept doing what we were doing, now I know what we were doing was not correct, don't get me wrong, but if we kept doing what we were doing, it was going to cost us about $10 million to keep doing what we were doing and grow like we grow, because it's a conservative bank. And right now it's a really good time to be a conservative bank. We get a lot of calls from a lot of people in the federal government going, hey, this bank over here, not so good. Would you like to come take a look at them? And we never know when that call is coming or what's going on. So we are growing by leaps and bounds. And they made this nice presentation for us, and the dollar amount was definitely there. Even if we tweaked a couple things, we might have been able to get that cost down to like $4.5 million in savings. But then the thing that really blew me away was Commvault, and Dave already hit on, is their service and support. The Commvault folks show up to put in their proof of concept. And when they show up to do the proof of concept, they walk in, they get the proof of concept going, everything's perfect, everything's good. And we mentioned, someone else's proof of concept over here, they've been working on for 2 months, major backup vendor. They can't get it working. The engineer looks at it and goes, hey, I know what your problem is. It's your RAID controller card. I think that was what it was. And lo and behold, he fixed the issue the other backup vendor was having. I've never had a vendor fix someone else's proof of concept and bring theirs up and not really, that's just what they did. They were very, very good folks, very good to work with. Those two things really sold us on the Commvault system and how it works. So that all said, that's just a brief introduction of the project. And I think, okay, which one is it? Okay, got it. Thanks. Like I said, I'm in management, so I can't use this. Okay. This is our current environment right now. We have 2 sites, 3 clusters, 2 at the primary, 1 at the secondary. We currently have over 75 VMs working, and that probably increases every day. We have our critical Mission-critical applications, we started moving over 2 months ago. Really no issues, no problems with that. It's going great. We're going to double those numbers in the next 12 months, at least double those numbers. We've only been at this for about 12 months right now, and what we started with this is great. 50 terabytes of storage at our primary site and at our secondary site that is replicating. We'll show you how that works here in a little bit. And what was driving this all was backup and restore disaster recovery. This is one of those slides I might be able to understand. We actually have, this is our primary and our secondary sites up there. Every day we back up to our SAN at our primary site. We dedupe to that SAN, 80-some percent dedupe right there. Then from that SAN we use the Commvault data replicator. And it replicates every 30 minutes over to our secondary site. The beauty of this is we can see from one console, we can see our Linux servers, we can see our Windows servers, and we can see our physical and virtual servers on both of those, and we can see them at both sites. It's really nice how it's set up. The staff loves it. Everyone seems to be very pleased with it right now. That's what we've moved to. Now, the next slide will give us, all right. These are the benefits of what we've done. Our DR plan has gone from the critical systems being up in 1 week to critical systems being up in 24 hours. We've eliminated 60% of our tape costs, which is a big dollar amount. That one full-time employee that was running around like a chicken all the time is now carving out LUNs and bringing up VMs. It's a great thing. We had no adds to staff in any way, shape, or form with this, and we're actually much more productive now. 80 servers, we're about to 80 servers right now. That equates to about a $40,000 save just in electricity. Yeah, senior management loves that kind of stuff. Dedupe ratio, like I said, is somewhere in the 80s every day. Works out real well. Without that dedupe, we would never be able to replicate across the DS3 that we have. We're going to use the rest of that bandwidth probably to replicate our mainframe here in a little bit. That's what we're heading for. Main server backup time reduced from 90 hours to 24 hours, and actually what's going to be much less here in a bit, and then increase our backups, our incrementals from 24 hours to 2 hours. The real key was down at the bottom here. It gives us scalability to handle all the new projects coming in. We never know when someone's going to bring in a business analytics system and go, hey, it's going to take 2 terabytes, and you've got to make this work and put it on top of your existing infrastructure, and can you have that by next Tuesday? And now we can say, well, how can you give us 2 or 3 weeks instead? And we'll have it up and running, just to give an idea. But we just lay systems on top of this infrastructure, and it works very, very well. Okay. And there are some challenges. The VCB, backing up things twice to back them up doesn't really make much sense. And management of the new VMs as we grow forward, it's a lot more VMs to manage, but we're working through those issues. Now we realize we've been at this about 12 months right now, and this is not the biggest success story you'll hear about VMware or data backup, but what it's given us is the ability to grow and grow quickly and a scalable system for the future. With that all said, I'll turn it back over to Dave. Here you go, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. So the example at First National Bank is a great one, right? Here's a bank that's been conservative traditionally, but is moving aggressively to a virtualized data center, has started off and already has a significant deployment, 50 terabytes of storage, 75 or 80 VMs, and that's growing rapidly. So that's a perfect illustration of what we're seeing in general, and what obviously all of you are either interested in or seeing as well. The problems of management of data in a traditional data center have normally relied on things like deployment of agents to each of the physical servers, right? Each physical server is connected to its own storage. You rely on agents on each of these servers to move that data over your LAN or SAN to backup servers. And this is something that is scalable in terms of it's easy to add additional hardware for each server. If a particular server is not making the backup window, you can add technology like deduplication to help that, right? And we have all of that today, and that's working pretty well for most people. But when you start moving to something like a virtualized data center, you start consolidating these resources. The servers that you've traditionally had with excess resources, excess bandwidth, are now going away, and now you're starting to see higher utilization of your hardware for what makes you money, right? You want your critical business processes to be the ones that are using your hardware. You don't want to have excess bandwidth, excess CPU usage that's just sitting around and only used during your backup windows. This presents a real challenge when you start talking about things like, how do I protect my virtualized environments? I don't have extra bandwidth on my ESX hosts in order to move data. I don't have the extra CPU, and I have scale like I've never known. There's some difficulty, right, in acquiring a new server. You have to acquire a new server, set it up, and there's a lot of so now that barrier of entry is lowered, environments are starting to explode. People create VMs left and right. The cost savings realized by going to a virtualized environment, as that scales up, starts to get lost in the cost of managing and protecting and administering those environments. Finding new VMs that have been brought up so you can protect them adequately, seeing how those VMs are used, seeing if there's extra space on those VMs that's being taken up by data that's old and not really critical to your business. And so that's really the problem that we're looking to address. As you all know, vSphere 4.1 introduces massive scale. It introduces massive scale to the point where a single vCenter deployment can handle the majority of all VMware customers' data centers, right? You can have a single vCenter that controls 10,000 VMs. This is something that just encourages massive growth. What do we do today for you? Today, we have, at this very moment, we have agents. We have a virtual server agent. This agent plugs into the rest of our infrastructure and leverages things like deduplication and encryption. We have one agent that sits outside of the ESX server. That sits on a proxy, which can be ESXi, which is fine. And we use VADP APIs in order to do protection. What does that mean? We can initiate snapshots. We have automatic discovery. We can move data, only the changed blocks from the VMDKs. We can do entire VM restores. We can do single file restores from those VMs without having to restage the VMs. There's really not a lot of impact on the virtual servers because the backup data movement has been offloaded, right? You have a number of backup options: whole VM, volume level, file level. We can do incremental backups extremely quickly because we're leveraging the change block tracking features in VADP. And from one backup, if you do a container level backup, as I mentioned, you can restore a single file. Okay. And this is a typical environment where you have an ESX server pool, data stores, and we use VADP over several different transfer methods, and that's up to you. We can leverage our embedded deduplication with this, which is something that everyone is also very interested in. This is, again, a cost savings. And in the end, virtualization is all about saving costs and increasing your flexibility, right? So we have software deduplication built in to our product. It is hardware agnostic. You don't have to buy proprietary hardware in order to leverage it. And the biggest advantage of our deduplication is that we can tier it off to multiple levels of storage without having to rehydrate the data. So if you're doing a backup of VMs and you have one agent that's moving a bunch of data, we can do source-side deduplication. And this will help reduce the amount of data that travels over the LAN, right, by quite a bit, 90 to 95%. This data can then be sent to one of our deduplication stores. These stores can sit on any open disk. And if you wanted to create a second tier of storage off of that, say to tape or to cloud, that duplication remains. So you have 90% reduction from client to our media server, and that 90% reduction stays in place when you move it to cloud or to tape. So you don't incur any penalty for wanting to tier off your storage off of disk, okay, off of the disk target. The solution is very, very scalable. In this particular diagram, we have 3 nodes. Each one can handle 64 terabytes of deduplicated data. So assuming a 10-to-1 reduction, we're talking 640 terabytes of source data. Right? And that's on commodity storage, commodity hardware. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So what I've described to you so far is something that is not terribly uncommon Just about all the VM protection solutions today use the VADP APIs, right? That's something that VMware has made available for everyone, and it's pretty common. It doesn't scale. That's the problem. You only have a limited amount of time to move the data from your ESX proxies into secondary storage, right? So what happens when your environment expands? It goes to hundreds or thousands of VMs. And even if you're not there yet, I'm sure you will be. Initial implementations of our agent relied on VCB. I'm sure you're all familiar with VCB. I'm sure you're all familiar with the issues around VCB. It didn't scale, lots of data movement problems. You had to move the entire VMDK over the wire. So instead of VCB, VMware introduced the vStorage Advanced Data Protection APIs, right? That's what we are relying on today. With no cache, the incremental is very fast. There's limited data movement. Huge improvement. However, for us, the future is in what we call Snap Protect. Okay? Snap Protect is a feature that is actually part of our suite currently. And what that is it's a framework which allows for leveraging hardware and hardware snapshot capabilities in order to do data protection as part of your normal backup lifecycle. Okay? Today, for most instances, if you're familiar with snapshots are usually kind of a side note to your normal backups, right? Backups are used for DR and long-term data protection. Snapshots are kind of scripted, usually off to the side, and you might use them to do some data mining or maybe do like 4 snapshots a day in case something happens. Moving the data off from snapshots to tape is often difficult, and restoring the data once it's been moved to tape is virtually impossible, especially if you do that with an application, right? So I'm sure everyone here, or a lot of people here, are using arrays like Equalogic or NetApp arrays or IBM XIV, EMC Clarion, Symmetrics, and you all have bought this wonderful snapshot technology, but it's probably not being used a whole lot in your data center. We aim to change that. Snap Protect leverages the hardware APIs, and so we will leverage the capabilities of the hardware that you have. We have a pretty wide range of support. In this case, what we're doing is we are extending this snapshot capability into protecting VMs. What does that mean? That means that the speed of protecting your VMs is limited only by the speed of quiescing and unquiescing the VMs themselves. And I'll show that in a few minutes. I actually have a demo for you. This is highly scalable. One snapshot for a data store can protect every VM on that data store at once, and snapshots are extremely fast. So now you get rid of the window that you have to normally have in order to protect thousands of VMs, right? That's gone. It's application aware. We pay attention to the apps that are on the VMs. We can make sure that they're quiesced, so we've integrated with a number of the applications, major applications out there like Exchange and SQL. And we can reuse the data that we collect from these snapshots for things like DR and mining. Okay. So really, Snap Protect is focused towards an enterprise play, but it does scale down for much cheaper solutions like Equalogic. Right? Equalogic arrays are low cost, and they're pretty fast and have a lot of capability. So even mid-range in smaller businesses can afford to have this kind of solution for a large environment. Okay. How does it work? Virtual machine pools with ESX on ESX servers using VMFS data stores. The data stores can be connected via via iSCSI or Fibre Channel, and in some cases for things like NetApp can be connected with NFS. Okay, and this is all supported with Snap Protect. We again sit on a proxy server, so we don't take up any resources on your production ESX servers. What we allow you to do is schedule snapshots through the day. So instead of having only one backup per day, because you only have 24 hours to move that data to disk or tape, we now give you the ability to create multiple recovery points throughout the day. In this case, we're doing them every 8 hours. These copies are available for fast recovery. We can allow you to restore single VMs even when we snap the entire data store. Okay, and that's very fast. That's from local disk. Once we have created those copies, you probably want to back one of those up once a day to something more permanent like disk or tape. We will mount those data stores onto a ESXi proxy, which will allow us to then tier off the data copies to secondary storage, which includes cloud natively in our software. So if you didn't want to use tape and you had high bandwidth and you were looking at something like Nirvanix or S3 or AT&T for cloud services, we can move your VMs and your VM backups to cloud storage. Okay. Any questions for this so far?
So that ESXi proxy,
Mm-hmm.
does that have to be a system that's sitting in your data center?
We can use a VM on any of your existing hosts. This just happens to offload it to a separate server. Just for data movement purposes. But it can be any system that you want. And you can use ESXi.
My assumption was you're mounting the entire data store back and
For the restore? I'm sorry? The only reason we need a VM is if you're going to move the data from the data store onto something like tape, then we will use the VM in order to read the data store, right? It's VMFS. That's all. Okay. So at this point, let me show you a little demonstration that we have. Let's switch over here. So this is our GUI. Okay, our GUI is Java-based. And here you can see in the GUI how our virtual server agent is displayed. We have a storage policy, which dictates how long you want to keep the data, what storage you want to use to keep the data. In this case, it has 2 copies. We have one vCenter deployment with a backup set. And each one of these protection policies on the right-hand side is configured to look at a particular data store, okay? If we look at the discovery rules that we have data store affinity. What that means is that any VMs that appear that use this data store will be protected by this policy. So in this case, we have 10 stores. Each one of those has 50 VMs on it. If we look a little more closely at the properties of each protection policy, what you'll see is that we actually have configured, here you go, in this case, XIV. All you have to do is tell us what type of storage you have. Okay? We support a pretty wide array of hardware. And what you do is you give us the array credentials once. So it's not something that you'll have to configure over and over again. Once you configure a particular array, you can forget about it. Just tell us which type of array you have, and we'll go get the credentials. Here's the data store associated with this particular protection policy. And if you take a closer look, these are all the VMs that we know about for this particular policy. In this case, there are 50. And since 10 data stores, we have about 500 VMs that we're protecting. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to kick off a backup. Okay? We're going to back up all of the protection policies, which are also known as subclients for us. The first part of a backup for us is discovery. According to the rules that we have in the protection policy, what will happen is that the first thing we'll do is we'll go query vCenter for all the VMs that are associated with a particular policy. And each policy is being kicked off as a separate job in this case. So there are 10 jobs going. They're all querying vCenter, and they're trying to figure out, hey, what are the VMs that are here? Do I have any new ones that I need to keep track of? Okay. After about 90 seconds, we move to the backup phase. Each one of these is progressing separately. And we'll shift over to vCenter in a moment, and what you'll see in vCenter is that all the VMs are being quiesced. Okay? So all the VMs that are part of these protection policies are being quiesced. This actually takes the longest amount of time. Part of the reason for this is because we're running on commodity hardware, really cheap boxes in this case. So for 500 VMs, it takes about 7 minutes to quiesce all of those VMs. At this point, we're shifting to creating the snaps. All the snaps are created. That takes less than a minute. Okay? Once the snapshots are created, we'll go and unquiesce the VMs. And you can just watch that happen. And again, that takes about 7 minutes to bring all the VMs back from being quiesced. Once we're done, another 7 minutes goes by, our backups are complete. So at this point, you have 500 VMs on 10 data stores that have been protected in about 17 minutes. And that 17-minute period is just the longest time, by the way. There are other protection policies that finished faster. So there you go. Yes?
How long is each individual VM addressed for? Is that a period, or?
So roughly depends, right? Some of the VMs here, some of the protection policies, depending on how long it takes to bring them all, to quiesce them all, can be quiesced for about 10, 12 minutes, something like that. It could be for a particular operation. That's right. Okay. So this solution is one we expect to scale for thousands of VMs. If you added more VMs per data store, or if you added more data stores, the only time limit is how long it takes to quiesce the VMs, and that depends on the power of your ESX servers. Right? So if you have faster ESX servers than we did, and I'm sure you do, I'm positive that you do, this operation will be even faster, and the quiesce period will be much shorter. Okay. What about recovery once we take these snaps? Recovery from snapshots is traditionally hard, and now you have these volumes that are VMFS, and you don't know what to do with them. Right? Well, for us, all recovery is GUI-based. It's very straightforward. We give you a full listing of what's on those VMs, and it is possible to do single-file recovery from those snapshots as well. And that's something that's all driven from our GUI. Our GUI, since it's Java-based, can be run anywhere as an applet or as a console-based application on any number of platforms. So Snap Protect gives you the ability to protect hundreds or thousands of VMs in a short period of time. Gives you granular recovery capability, single VMs from those snaps, or you can go ahead and cover individual files if necessary. And it's very easy to do the recovery. And as you all know, you really don't, backups you don't really think about until you have to actually recover something, and that's when the pressure's on. Right? That's when your CEO is calling saying, hey, what happened to this VM? Everything stopped. That's when it really counts, and that's where we try to excel. We've integrated with a wide array of hardware, as I mentioned before. We showed you IBM XIV. We also support EMC Clarion and Symmetrix, VMAX, Solera. We support NetApp with NFS, and actually we do that with Solera as well. So if you have a NetApp on the back end and your data stores are mounted via NFS, we can protect that for you with this capability. We're adding new arrays all the time. That's something that if you don't see your array here, or if you have questions about your array or support, come see us, and we're happy to discuss that with you. Okay. Again, there's no scripting at all in order to handle snapshots. It's all done within our GUI, within our framework. We make it as easy for you as possible to leverage the power of the hardware that you already have, that you've already paid for. So now that you've protected your VMs, how do you figure out what's on them? How do you manage the sprawl? How do you manage the storage space? And what we can offer for you is all of our policy-based management capabilities. As I mentioned before, we have a number of ways to do discovery. So if you're tasked with protecting VMs and you can't count on everyone to tell you, hey, I brought up a new VM and I need it protected, we'll figure it out for you. We have a number of different ways to discover VMs and to associate them with particular protection policies. I showed you data store affinity earlier. We can use cluster affinity, ESX server affinity. We use regular expressions. Say you have engineering VMs that are named a certain way. We can designate those for protection, and if you have test VMs that you don't want to protect, no problem. We won't pay attention to them. Okay? So by automating that, we really reduce the workload on you in order to protect your environments and to customize the environments for your particular business requirements. Storage resource management is something that not a ton of people have talked about, but is something that is growing more and more important, especially as you have VM sprawl. Right? Figuring out what's on your VMs and determining what you really need there is something that a lot of people are interested in, and we try to provide that for you. So what we can do is, based on our backups, we can go ahead and tell you what's on your VMs. If you have, 50% of your files are more than 6 months old and haven't been accessed in 90 days, we can show you those per VM. And these reports are actionable. So combined with our agents like our file system archiving agent, we can actually use the reports here in order to generate actions for our archiving. So we can say, okay, well, all of those files that are old that I haven't touched, go ahead and move them off my VM. So instead of you, the administrator, having to go and allocate more storage to a particular VM for not a great reason other than the fact that it's running out, this provides you a really great way to effectively and particularly cost-effectively allocate storage to your VMs and manage what's going on with them at a very granular level. This is just one report that we're showing. We actually have quite a few reports, but I didn't want to bore you with all those screens. So we can show you things like utilization of the VMs. We can show you storage trends, how fast storage space is being used on any particular number of VMs. Lots of different views for you. Okay. And finally, the big one, as virtualization becomes more and more accepted, people are moving critical business applications into virtualization. It's no longer just file and print. Some servers that are not really particularly interesting, right? You're starting to see Exchange servers, SQL servers, Oracle in VMs. So what we do for that is we allow for application integrated protection. How do you ensure that Exchange is backed up when you do a VM backup? What we'll do is we have an agent that sits on those critical servers, and there's usually a smaller number of them, so an agent is not a problem. An agent provides you a lot of granular control. And we will interact with the application in order to make sure that it's in the right state for us to do the backups. Okay? We will also do things like log management for Exchange via mechanisms like VSS. There's no agent license. We recognize the fact that licensing is a big problem when talking about agents. For this kind of functionality, we don't allocate a license for it. So there's no concern about having to buy more licenses for virtual servers that don't do anything. Right? We recognize that. We don't charge you for it. And we can also do then, at that point, we can do individual item level recovery for things like Exchange email. Information mining for us works the same way. So combined with things like our content indexing and search, we'll be able to provide you granular retention capability of items inside VMs. So what you can do is you can say, okay, well, I have an Exchange server. I've done a VM level backup of it, but I only want to protect certain emails out of that for longer periods of time, or bring those emails into my compliance subsystem because I know that my CEO is on this VM and his email's there, and CFO and her email is over here. I want to make sure I protect those. We'll be able to give you those capabilities combined with our snapshots. So one snapshot, many uses. Really, it's really quite efficient. Okay. And last but not least, we recognize that licensing, again, is a problem. Right? And a lot of things you can only do with an agent. I mean, if you want to do file-level restore to a VM, you either put the file on a share somewhere, or you have to have an agent on the VM in order to do the restore. Right? There's no way for us to just stick a file on a random VM. So we've introduced things like restore-only agents, where the licenses don't get allocated, and we've simplified our licensing models to include things like capacity-based licensing. So instead of telling us, I have 1,000 VMs, tell me how much it is, we'll say, okay, well, We're going to license you for 50 terabytes. You can have 10,000 VMs or you can have 10 VMs. We really don't care, right? We'll give you those capabilities, so it's up to you. The flexibility is there for you to work with your VM environment while still making it easy to make sure that licensing is in order. We have a lot of views and reports for that as well to make it extremely simple. Okay. So, in summary, what's happening in virtualization today? We have a lot of problems that are solved with virtualization, especially cost, right? Everyone wants to be more efficient with their resources. Everyone wants to make sure the utilization of storage and servers is higher. How do you do that? Virtualization. However, the thing to be careful of is that it really introduces a number of new challenges and a number of new thoughts that are not really there when you're thinking about a physical infrastructure. Management, sprawl of VMs, storage utilization, these are all things that are introduced when you go to a virtualized environment. And really, management of scale is the key. And what do we do there for you? We've introduced policies and automated processes to help you manage this in a very simple way, and really to free you from the burden of having to do granular management, which will take up all of your time. And I'm sure you have many other better things to do than that. And we're here to help you with that. Virtualization is the first step to cloud computing that most people take, and that's something that we're very aware of. We have a lot of cloud capabilities, both from the compute side as well as the cloud storage side. If you have questions about that, I didn't really address that in this presentation, come see us. Come see me here, or we can talk about it in the booth downstairs afterwards. And the last bit, which is very important, is that our software by itself, without any additional components or other software, can manage both your virtualized as well as your physical environments. Not everyone has completely 100% virtualized their environments. There will be periods of transition or resources that will always sit on physical resources. And so instead of having to use one piece of software for your virtual environment and another piece of software for your physical environment, we'll do it all for you from one place, from one GUI that you can manage from anywhere. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time today. You all have surveys, by the way. If you fill those out and bring them to our booth, 307, I think it is, we'll give you a T-shirt. And also, please remember to fill out the surveys for the presentation separately. I will not campaign for a good mark. You guys can put me down for whatever you want. But thank you very much. Any questions? Open up to Q&A. Yes, in front. RDM we can support right now with our Snap Protect as well. That's not a problem. As long as RDM is supported for the particular hardware combination you have, we can do Snap Protect for application data that's on those volumes. I'm sorry? I believe the requirement is for it to be in... actually, no, I think it has to be in virtual. Yep. Yes? Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you talked about application integration and application store that was running the whole VM. Just wondering how that works. Is familiar with file store? Is there a certain some files associated with an app you store? Yep. Is that available now or coming in the future?
So the question is the application integration where we can do single item recovery out of apps from a snapshot, right? How does that work? That's something that is not yet available. Some of the Snap Protect, for instance, is not available today. Our lawyers insist that I say that it is coming in a future release, but I will tell you that we recognize how important all of this is to you. I showed you a demo. It will come sooner rather than later. But essentially what we can do is we can look at we understand the structures of a bunch of the data sets, and we can go into there without the applications and read the data from them. Okay. Any other questions? There's one over here before. No? Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.